career, he has successfully driven category leadership differentiation strategies for over 100 companies, including VMware, PeopleSoft, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, PeopleSoft, etc. Without much further ado, please welcome Bob Wright.
There we go. Good morning. Secrets of Silicon Valley. It was the year 2000, actually 1999, and I received a call from a technology executive from Tel Aviv. And this particular technology executive had developed some very disruptive, groundbreaking technology, but he had a problem. His company was stalled, and none of the buyers understood really what this product did. So I asked this technology executive, why your product now? Why your product now? And the answers he gave me weren't very clear. So I did some analysis, did some investigation, and after a couple weeks I came back and I realized there was no language for what this product did. It was too far ahead of its time. So as a result, the technology executives had to speak and talk about the product in geek speak and take 30 slides before a buyer could even understand what the product did. So I asked him the second question. I said, what problem does this product solve? And boom, we had the story. We had to climb inside the language of the buyer, and from there we were able to create a powerful story about this product that resonated deeply with the buyer and with the market. And the company took off. 2 years later, this company was bought by SAP for a very, very nice premium. And then a couple years later, this executive, Shai Agassi, went on to lead the world's largest business software company, SAP. This is the power of positioning, and that's why we're here today. My name's Bob Wright, and I'm really grateful for all of you to show up today for my presentation. We find ourselves in India right now, the seat of some of the world's oldest religions, one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and where 1,500 years ago, the binary numerical system was actually discovered, and that's really the reason we're all here today. And according to a recent McKinsey report, India is now poised to lead the world again and become the first truly mobile digital society. So I'm very, very excited to be here at this particular junction in your country's history. And the agenda we're going to work with today over the next couple of hours, and I'm not going to stand up here all 2 hours and talk. We're going to make this an interactive session today because I really do want to hear from you and what your particular challenges and problems are. So I've cut back the 12 rules to 6. I was in Pune earlier this week, and there were 12 rules, but I had 4 hours to speak. We have 2. So I will leave a lot of time at the end and actually during the session to take your questions. But the agenda we're going to work with today is as follows. First, what is positioning? Where does it fit? What does it look like? Followed by a new positioning model that I have been working with technology executives, a new model that has helped them take their products and services and solutions and offerings to gain a competitive differentiation and drive market leadership, but most importantly, really, accelerate revenue and increase their market valuation. After the positioning model, I'm going to walk through, it says 9, but I'm going to make 6. There's 6 positioning rules we're going to walk through, and these are really best practices that I have discovered through my work of positioning well over 200 different technology clients. I mean, I have a great job. All I do is go around to all these technology companies, these really smart people, and find out what works and what doesn't, and then I put it in my process and the next client, and you all get to benefit from that. So after the model, I'm going to talk a little bit about walking through 6 positioning steps and best practices. But more importantly, we're going to put the positioning model and practices in action. And it's really difficult for me sometimes to do these workshops because positioning, when you see good positioning, it's really, really simple. And it's like, oh, yeah, no software, oh, yeah. But to get to that point, it takes 2, 3, 4 months to get to that point. But I do have a framework that I'm going to share with you today and a methodology that you can take this positioning model and these rules and actually start to begin putting in action within your own companies and help you start creating these powerful stories and messages for yourselves. And then finally, we'll talk about some positioning strategies. How do you compete against, if you're in a market and there's big, entrenched, well-funded competitors? Or what happens if it's a new category? What's a proper positioning and a successful positioning strategy for a new category? Or what if I'm shifting from a single product company to a multi-product company? What do I do then? And then we'll also talk a little bit about some launch strategies and how you might roll out your positioning story and your product to the market as well. What is positioning? I believe to help define positioning, it really is helpful to step back and let's take a look at the technology industry today. What's really, really fascinating and unique about our industry is we're one of the few industries that gets disrupted by inflection points. Inflection points could be mobile, it could be a new architectural platform like mobile or cloud or social. An inflection point could be M&A. Maybe my competitor got bought, or maybe I got bought. It could be I'm bringing out a new product. It could be a new business model like SaaS or open source or freemium. And historically in the technology industry, we would get hit by these inflection points maybe once a year, maybe every 18 months. But what's really unique right now today in our industry is it seems like these inflection points are hitting almost every quarter. Companies are getting hit by these inflection points. And what's really great about inflection points are an opportunity for any company to drive significant revenue growth. Also, though, inflection points are an opportunity for your competitors to come in and take your market leadership role away from you and render you obsolete. So the better technology companies do in managing these inflection points, the better off they're going to be as far as accelerating their revenue growth. Now, the problem that's epidemic from my vantage point in the technology is this. In response to an inflection point, all technology companies come up with a new strategy. What's my mobile strategy? Oh, cloud. Oh, what's my cloud strategy? Or what's my new product strategy? And the problem in the industry right now today is strategy to the point of revenue is broken. Strategy to the point of revenue is broken. First, most strategies take too long to get to the point of revenue. Let's take HP, Hewlett-Packard, poster child for this. Last year, 2010, Hewlett-Packard hired a very powerful, seasoned ex-SAP executive to run the company. 1 month later, comes out with a new cloud and networking strategy. 3 quarters later, the street is going, hey, where's the revenue from your new strategy? Where's the revenue growth? And now he's out of a job. The other point is not only does strategy take too long to get to the point of revenue, but also often strategies don't maximize the revenue opportunity afforded by that inflection point. Let's take a great example is MySpace. You know, the social innovator, social networking innovator, first to market advantage, very quickly got usurped by Facebook, which is maximizing the revenue opportunity for that particular inflection point, social networking. And I think the root cause is not strategy. Most companies have a very good strategy. The product's defined, it's a good product, usually have a good business model, usually have a good channel strategy. But really, it's making your strategy work is broken. And that's all the go-to-market, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Let's take a perfect example. Let's take VMware. So, everybody's familiar with VMware. And how many in this crowd are B2B companies? Good majority. How many are B2C? A handful. Okay. A lot of the examples I'm going to use are B2B, because that's generally where I operate. But a lot of the points and the process and methodology and model work perfectly well for B2C companies as well. But let's take VMware. So VMware created a whole category called virtualization. And they were very, very successful selling virtualization servers over the phone to a data center executive. Next day they woke up, they became a cloud computing company. New strategy. And as a result now they had to talk to a CIO, cloud computing committee, whole slew of different buyers they'd never even marketed or sold to, VP of applications, VP of security. And not only that, they had to compete against a whole bunch of competitors like Google and Amazon, and even former partners like BMC that they never competed before. This is the root cause of strategy to the point of revenue, is it takes too long for marketing and sales to adapt and transform to call on a new buyer and compete against a new set of competitors. And this is the problem that's epidemic in the technology industry today. And this is why I have a great business, because that's what we do, is we take strategy and get it to the revenue a lot better, faster, and quicker. What do you have to have in the context of all the go-to-market to drive strategy to the point of revenue? Well, first, on this journey, the go-to-market journey should not be undertaken lightly. And generally, most technology companies treat the effort it's required to take the marketing and sales efforts to a new set of buyers and a new set of competitors very casually. For example, we have to know on this journey, is there even a market for this new strategy? And do I know enough about my new buyers? Secondly, once I do that, what is the story? Do I have a story that's relevant, that's going to resonate, that's differentiated? And then sales enablement, sales success. Can I take that story down to a sales conversation level? And do I have a sales success model on how to call on those new buyers? Next, do I even know where my revenue is going to come from? Which accounts are going to, who are my target accounts? I mean, most sales VPs that I know anyway, you ask them, hey, where's your revenue number going to come this year? Oh, well, I'll just hire about 5 more reps and, I'll increase everybody's quota. What I'm finding there's a better way to do it is through a lot of analysis and determining exactly which territories, which geos, which target accounts are going to be more likely to buy your new strategy, your new product, new solution. And then what are the marketing levers that I need to put together? Campaigns, promos, packaging, actually bring that revenue in. And finally, I need to roll it out. What's my launch strategy? And again, not just a point in time, but how do I sustain and keep momentum over a period of time? Now, this is what we're going to talk about today, is we're going to really narrowly focus on this part of the journey, which is, what is my story, and is it different, and will it resonate with my buyers? What do all these companies have in common? Has everybody heard of these companies that are up here? Riverbed and IBM and Salesforce, Apple. I did put a B2C one in there. Workday. What do they all have in common? They all have in common very powerful stories. Every single one of these companies, all the successful companies in the technology industry today, the ones that are driving significant revenue growth, the ones that are market leaders, all have powerful stories. And that's why positioning now is becoming a core competency for many of these companies today. So the question is, well, what is positioning? And this is a traditional definition of positioning by Al Rees. Positioning is in the mind of the prospect. This is a really key. I don't know how many, the first thing I walk into a lot of times with technology companies, I ask them, well, tell me a little about your product. Oh, this is the best product in the world. I said, well, what do your buyers think about it? Oh, they think it's crap. Well, then it is, right? It's only in the minds of the buyers that really matters. That is reality. Oh, well, the buyers think it's really hard to use. Well, then your product is hard to use. So the fundamental key to positioning is reality is actually what your buyers think, not necessarily what you believe. Number one tenet. The second thing is it's how you differentiate your solution in the minds of your buyers. Why are you different? Also, positioning cuts through all the clutter. The most powerful positioning is one or two words or a sentence. That's why I try to tell stories. I think stories bring companies and products alive, and they're a lot more engaging than the blah, 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 blah that you typically get from most technology companies. So that's what I try to, I'll show you the way I have been working with tech companies and building these powerful stories, because they're a lot more engaging with our audiences. But what's really important, not only do they cut through the clutter, but it's really important that they clearly differentiate you from the other alternatives they have. And then finally, it focuses on the perceptions of the prospect. Again, it doesn't matter what you think, it matters what the market thinks. You know you have a position. How do you know you have a positioning problem? Well, you know you have a positioning problem if your slide deck's 30 slides. You know you have a positioning problem when you got really long sales cycles, and at the end, you had a lot of no decisions because the buyer can't make up their mind. You also know you have a positioning problem when blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's an American term. Is that an American term? Blah, blah, blah? So it's you sound like everybody else. That's when you know you have a positioning problem. I always have the logo test. Here's the logo test, right? If you can take your logo, your competitor's logo, and stick it on your website, nobody would know the difference, you got a positioning problem. How do you know you have a positioning problem? Well, you ask 3 people what your company or product does, and you get 3 different answers. Then you got a positioning problem. Positioning is all about consistent messages. You also have a positioning problem if you're not even considered a player in the market, as well as you spent a lot of money on PR and you got nowhere. The other fundamental symptom I see in technology, especially in Silicon Valley, is you know you got a positioning problem when your salespeople call on anything that moves. They're not focused. So they don't care if whatever has money, I'm going to go after. That's a bad place to be. Long sales cycles, they're calling on the wrong kind of accounts. Positioning is all about focus, focus, focus. Focus on the right buyers, focus on the ideal situation, the ideal accounts. And finally, you don't have a viewpoint. And these are symptoms that I always see when I know a company has a positioning problem. So what I'd like to do is, rather than have me pontificate for 2 hours, I really would love to hear from you. And here, I'm going to write them on the board. I want to hear what positioning challenges and problems you're running into and you're facing. And then as I walk through the model and my new, and the steps, we can discuss some of those specific situations you have and leave you with a little knowledge on that you can actually take home and use for these. So who's got a positioning problem they really want me to talk about or address? Yes, sir.
We have some mics in the back. Can we just have them come up front?
Well, there's a gentleman way in the back. We'll take him because I always feel bad for the people in the back. So if you can give him a microphone right back there, we'll start with him. Or he's got a loud voice, maybe.
Mic's just behind you.
Yeah. I have a positioning problem for my product, which is primarily targeted to retail crowd. I have a competitor who is a big player in the industry.
Yep.
And they're all over. Like, they're in the print media, they're on national television. and wherever you see, I can't match them in terms of the marketing budget they have. But what I can do is I can do something on the ground to get noticed. So how do I go about it?
Yeah, so the question is, if I can rephrase, is how do I compete against a well-funded competitor that has a lot of salespeople on the ground, probably a big advertising budget when I don't even have any, and a huge marketing dollars. And I'll definitely give you some tips for that. Yes, that's great. Yes, sir, right here in the blue.
My positioning problem is that I want to know whether we should position our features, product features, or we should position the differentiators.
Oh, which of the features are a differentiator?
Yeah, what is the important thing, to position the features or the differentiators?
Oh, so the question is it important to position the features or the differentiators? Is that correct? I'll answer that question real quickly. It's the differentiators. Nobody cares about your features. Nobody cares about your product, frankly. They don't care. What they care about is if you solve something big for them, and they only care about the 2 or 3 features that's going to help do that. So now I'm just being a little provocative here. I think you have to have for positioning to work, you have to have a very good product. I'm just assuming the product works and it's really good and it's comprehensive. But you have 500 features. You can have a slide deck that goes through every single one of those 500 features, and your buyer will be asleep or they've left long ago. Or you focus on the 2 or 3 that are really different, but more importantly, really value to that buyer. And I'll talk about a model for doing that. So my answer is focus on the differentiators. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, Bob. So this related to B2B technology platform companies. When you're competing with big companies, is similar to the first question which the gentleman raised. So how do you position against the biggies who have a lot of feet on the ground? They've been there for the last 20 years. And then your product obviously is good, let me assume. How do you compete or position your product in a very, in a cost-effective manner when startups don't have,
Yeah, so there's two issues with competing against big players. One is, how do I get the word out so anybody can even know that I'm a player? But more important, before you even do that, I think you have to have a clear, differentiated positioning story. Because the issue is, why should they talk to you when there's a brand name company? So let me give you an example, because this has come up twice. One of our clients is Riverbed. Do you know Riverbed, the big networking company? Very successful. Riverbed created the WAN. They're a networking company in San Francisco. Riverbed created the WAN acceleration market, which I have no idea what it is because I'm not a techie. The big market, became the market leader, $300 million company. They brought us in because they wanted to be the next important billion-dollar technology company. And the problem they had is this. They were selling to network IT networking guys. And the IT networking guys love Riverbed, right? Wildly enthusiastic, rabid at base. But for them to be a player and to be the next important technology company and to be the next billion-dollar technology company, they had to move up to the CIO and become a strategic vendor. And we did some brand analysis about Riverbed in the eyes of CIOs, and they were about 6th on the list. Nowhere. And they're competing against Cisco and Juniper, and Cisco had account control. And Cisco's conversation was, you don't need that. I'll just stick a WAN accelerator for free on my router, or I'll get to it next year. Don't worry about it. I'm your strategic vendor, right? So what's Riverbed going to do? So the big challenge they had is, number one, they weren't even in half the sales cycles because they didn't see them, because Cisco had already sold a router in there with a WAN accelerator or some form of it. But the second issue is the CIO is going, geez, I got a strategic networking vendor. Why do I want to talk to a little company like Riverbed, right? I talk to $6 billion Cisco. So what we did was this. We created a story, and the story has to be different. The question is, why Riverbed now? And this was a couple of years ago when the economic crunch really, the first one, really hit. All the IT budgets were being slashed. So we created a conversation about this. With Riverbed, we'll give you, Mr. or Ms. CIO, a multiplier effect on your existing investments in IT, in storage and in networking. We'll give you a 10x, performance factor on your existing investments. They love that story because here you are. Think about it. CIO, my budget's like this. My user expectations are like this. I got a huge gap. I'm going to be out of a job here, right? But if I can just bring in Riverbed and they're going to give me 10 more times power and networking, great. As soon as we did that, it was great. The company took off. We actually went back 6 months later and did another survey with CIOs, and Riverbed was the #2 most preferred vendor on the CIO's list, and they were the only company that took market share during that downturn. They took 42%. They had 42% growth market in their particular market, and everybody else lost market share and had negative growth. And now I think they're on their way to being that billion-dollar technology company. So the point is, you got to change the conversation. You got to change the conversation because right now, if you're competing against a big competitor, you're competing on their buying criteria and not yours. And Cisco was saying, that's a commodity product, just stick it on my router. And you're trying to say, look, I got a big pain. Cisco was for yesterday's problem. Today's problem is you don't have any budget. I can fix that problem and Cisco can't. And that's how they won. So what other, yes, sir?
So we are in the HR software space. We have a SaaS product. The problem is we sell to multiple people. So we have the HR manager as a
Yes, that's a good one.
I have also a manager in a small branch office with a customer. So he wants to manage the team. We also sell to outsourcers, who are providing HR outsourcing services. So we sell to multiple people. So how do we position to this?
So the question is, he's in the HR market, and the question that his particular positioning challenge is this. I'll paraphrase. You have multiple buyers. Within an enterprise, there's the HR director, these senior human resources manager, there's the HR IT people. In addition, there's HR outsourcing firms as well. The question is, who do you position to, right? So I'll answer this question real quickly, faster than the last one.
So this
Yeah.
part to that question.
Yeah.
Who do we position, and how do we build that story which creates that emotional appeal?
Yeah. So the question is, if you have multiple buyers, who do you position to? The cardinal rule of positioning is you position to one buyer. You position to one buyer, and you spin the messages to everybody else. Now the question is, who is that one buyer? Who has the money? Who has the money and the funded budget? That's who you position to. And you position to, if everybody else said no and they said yes, they would go with your solution. So generally, it's pretty high up in the organization. Now, what happens is, in the reality, from a sales situation, you're coming in at multiple entry points. So the way we do it is we create positioning, strategic positioning for that strategic buyer that has the money and the budget. And then we build sales enablement tools where we turn the marketing messages into sales conversations by buyer type. Here's my CIO message. When I go in and talk to the IT networking guy, here's my sales conversation. When I go in and talk to my IT apps guy, here's a different conversation. But it's still echoing the positioning messages. They're just spun for that particular audience. So, yes, sir. Yes, right, ma'am. Yes.
I have.
You're on.
Okay. Yeah, I have a problem about slotting the product in a particular category.
Yep.
So we work for the industrial users. So when I go to them and talk about the product, then they ask, is it a SCADA? No. Is it a MES? No. Then what it is? So I have to explain, that it is parts of this, parts of that. And
yes.
Traditionally, they are used to buying SCADA for a particular thing, even if their needs are not as big as that, and they spend a lot of money on that. But then how to get them to use a lean product which will serve their needs, but
So is the question, is the positioning challenge that you really have a new category of product? Is that it, really? And there's these existing categories. They always buy this, but they always buy apples, but I have a banana. And they don't buy bananas. How do I do that? Yes. So I've got very specific techniques about that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
We sell through alliances one of the products that we sell through partners, and typically the preference for these large Fortune 500 companies is to align partnerships with companies that already have a huge base and have some emotion connect with customers.
Yeah.
But if you're a startup and you want to create these connections, they see a lot of value in it, but the preference seems to be, do a zero risk, go with the existing market players versus a new one, where they have to do a lot more work.
Got it. So you've got partners. The question is, why should they go with you versus one of your competitors that perhaps has a lot more oomph in the marketplace, and what gives them the incentive to work with you versus anybody else? Yes. So remind me, I'll tell you the Shai Agassi story again and how they did it, because it's very applicable. Yes, sir.
Hi, Bob. This is Puneet. I was just wondering how are you going to use pricing as part of your positioning?
Pricing is positioning. All right? Real quickly, if you're competing on price, I should add that up there, number 10. If you're competing on price, you've got a positioning problem. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and I'll answer that question here. But if you're competing on price, you're in a commodity market, and if you can't be the low-cost provider, that's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, I got a question.
Hold on. So let me take the gentleman right here first. Who do you position to? Got it. Yeah. So you have multiple, the question is, who do you position to? Because you have multiple buyers. Yeah. Yes. Oh, I got it. So in other words, I'm selling, for example, software to a company. An HR VP may buy it, but the end users are actually, it's department users may be using it. So who do I position to? Yes, that's correct. So you got to position to the buyer. Here's what I always do. I think there's a confusion between marketing and sales, right? Sales is every single deal is going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to have sales tactics, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And marketing is more broad brush. I'm going to focus on this buyer generally. I'm going to focus on this part of the market generally. And then the salespeople, that gives them the general direction to go fight it out, if you will. Now, the reason I'm saying that is, from a marketing perspective, I'm going to focus and really get a great story for the person that has the money. But when I do my demos for sales, I'm going to have some really great features and capabilities and conversations for those end users, because they're going to have to influence the decision whether to go with you or not. So who else has the microphone? You've got it. All right.
I have a small add-on product which rides on an ERP.
Yep.
And the problem has been that we have been selling it through system integrators, but they don't see our product as a product to be pushed into the market. They only come to us only when the client is asking for a mobility solution. So I need to create a need for them to see it as a winning solution which they can position to all of their clients rather than just to a client who's just asking for it.
That's correct. So the problem that she has in her particular company is she has an add-on product. She's selling the add-on product through partners, which is a great way to get reach. But the problem is the partners, it's kind of like a nice to have, not a got to have, and only if the customer's actually asking for that product will they actually buy it. So you need to create a problem. Yes. And remind me to use we'll use the Shai Agassi story to solve that one too. Okay. Another microphone in the back, way back.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, I'm going to. Okay, yeah, I got it. We'll do a couple more, and then I actually have to do the presentation. Go ahead. This is great. You guys are great.
Yeah, when you launch a product in the market, you typically have many differentiators, and as the product goes into the market, the features are bought on by all your competition, and the product gets commoditized.
Yes, that's
so there
correct.
is a commodity. The product becomes a commodity. Yeah. What do you do when the product reaches the commoditized phase?
Yeah. So, I have a client of mine called Convergys. Yeah. Have you heard of Convergys? Yeah. I just did a big positioning product in the commoditized market to help them differentiate. We'll take one more, and then I've got to go, and then we'll have more questions. So, yes, sir, right here. Yeah. We'll take two. I'll take him, and then I'll take you, okay? Yes, sir.
We work in the space of functional test automation.
Okay.
Where return on investment is not really experienced till the date for many customers.
Yes.
So we have a solution with our first 8 to 10 customers. We could demonstrate more than 80 to 83% productivity gain.
Yes.
Now when we talk about it, so many customers, first they don't believe.
Yes.
Many of them, they feel that we're lying.
Yep.
And many of them, they raise expectations so much that they start expecting God out of it.
They start expecting what? I'm sorry?
God out of it.
So he's got a product that has great ROI or returns, and it's almost unbelievable, right? So so we'll talk about that. I've got a very specific example on that. Let's take one more with the microphone. Yes.
I have a product which is an e-newspaper, and world over, e-newspapers are not making money, and we have seen this trend in US also. I'm trying to crack that in the Indian market. I've been trying, time and again, I've been told that you're in a bad space because you're not going to take a crack at the hardbound newspapers that you get every day. So how do you get through these challenges?
Yeah, so you're in the newspaper business. The question is, how do you crack into a very crowded market, right? That kind of thing. Okay, we'll definitely talk about that. So why don't I continue with this? We'll continue the conversation as we walk through this. So I lost my presentation. Let's talk about the positioning model first that I've been working with, and that'll answer some of these questions. So I think here's the problem with technology companies. The problem with technology companies is this. You've spent years and years developing your really great intellectual property and product, and you're finally ready to go to the market, right? And you've just spent, like I said, thousands of hours talking about your product and getting it ready and doing this, and maybe find one customer or two that'll buy it, and we're finally ready to go out to the market. And then when do I go out to the market? Somebody asks, well, what are you all about? And all you do is talk about the product, naturally, because that's what you've been doing for years and years and years, right? Wrong, wrong, wrong. That's the absolutely worst way for you to get any traction in the marketplace is talking about your product. Because your buyers don't care. They don't care. The model that's working now is this. Shifting from a product-centric conversation to what I call a buyer conversation. What I mean by that is this. What is really, really key is to take your product and put it in the context of the market dynamics and the problems that your buyer cares about. If you walk away with anything at all, please walk away with that. It's, what does my buyer care about? What's their big, hairy problem? What keeps them up at night? That's what they want to hear about. And oh, by the way, if your product solves it, great. But the winning positioning strategies and the companies that are taking off are the ones that say, I know who my buyer is, here's your big, hairy problem, and I'm the only one that can solve it. That's it. And that's what this model is all about. Fundamentally shifting from a conversation about release 1.5 and its collaborative, flexible, cloud-based, mobile, social platform that's really great, to we're a brand new company that solves the fundamental problem of manufacturing returns, or close your books faster, or, you know, technology is too hard to use, or whatever that problem is. And oh, by the way, we got release 1.5 with its cool features and IP and collaborative and blah, blah, blah. It's a fundamental shift from the conversation about your product to actually your buyer. So let's give some examples. For example, I had a client of mine, retail. They're calling on the retail industry, this company was. This is a couple of years ago, and the company was losing money. And they were in the product information management space. I have no idea what the heck that is. But they said it was really cool. And the problem the CEO has is the board got rid of the management team. They brought a new CEO in. She cleaned it all up, got it back to profitability. And finally, they have a brand new product ready to go to market that's, you know, disruptive. We're going to take it. It's called Product Information Management. Release 1.5. It's a SaaS solution with geotag and XML. And I'm like, geez, if you go to market like this, you will be out of business. And we shifted the conversation and said, okay, for retailers, you're not a PIM SaaS solution. You're a solution that solves the problem of global brand execution. And if you're a retailer and you're trying to synchronize the flow of product information across your supply chain, we're the ones, because we got release 1.4 with our geotag XML PIM solution, right? See, it's a very different conversation. Same thing with another example. A client of mine, big data, I'm working with them right now. Again, the same thing. VCs took out the executive team, brought a new executive team in, and they have this, they just happen to be right in the spot with big data, and they've got a great solution for it. And I said, well, send me your presentation. Let me take a look at it. I don't know if I can help you or not. He thought he had a positioning problem. But the presentation, first thing, Release 5.0, big data analytics, point-in-time recovery, Hadoop, tiered storage. I'm like, oh, my God, my eyes are rolling back in my head. Again, spending some time with them, 2 or 3 months. Now we're having a conversation about this. The conversation we're having is, you as a business, how can you run your business without all the data? And we're having a conversation now about big data applications, not analytics, because everybody's talking analytics. And we're saying, hey, you're crazy. Now it's finally cost-effective to run your business and operationalize your business on big data. That's the conversation. It's a business-level conversation. It's not a techie conversation. And one more example. Another hot company called AppSense, UK-based company, came to the States, just got funded by Goldman, like Facebook, so hot, 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 right? Had a new category, user virtualization. They had a banana, right? Everybody's selling oranges, they had a banana. Similar to you, they came into the States, got some traction through Citrix, and Citrix was bringing them in specifically to solve a desktop virtualization problem they were having, right? They needed some extra feature. Well, for this company, they want to go public. They're going to go public in 15 months. For them to go public, they needed to stand on their own. They didn't need to be a feature of Citrix. They needed to become a strategic vendor, move higher in sales cycles, and again, focus on a CIO buyer. So the conversation when I showed up was user virtualization, Win 7 desktop migration will make your Citrix work better. And we changed that conversation and said, oh, excuse me. The problem for a CIO right now is user complexity. And the problem you're running into when you're moving to an IT as a service is you got to manage all these millions of configurations. I got this iPad here, I've got your mobile phone, I got your desktop, I got your portable. They all have different configurations, different apps. And you as an IT person got to manage every single one of those. Wouldn't you rather manage a user rather than your device? Much more compelling conversation. And that's how they're creating a category, is they're solving a really big problem. Same thing, that's what Shai did at Top Tier, his company. He actually went through Bond. Bond was another ERP company. They had an add-on ERP. The problem, why Shai's company took off, frankly, Bond had bought all these products. And they were telling the world, all this stuff works together. We've got an integrated ERP. Stuff didn't really work together. 18 months, maybe it might work together. They brought in Top Tier. The stuff made it look like it all would integrate. So every Bond rep had to bring in Top Tier because the promise that they were solving a big problem for Bond. So my recommendation for you again is, what's the big problem your partner's having that's preventing them from selling more? And if you can solve that, boom, you'll take off. So again, this is an example of moving from a product conversation to a buyer conversation. Let's move into the rules. And these rules are the ways I put this into practice. And again, these are the best practices. So what I do is when I do a 2-day, yeah, oh, done? Oh, I know. The presentation keeps changing. It's going to go down to 3 because I ran out of time. There's actually 12 of them, but today, abbreviated version. Why don't we talk about this one first, because this is a great one. SMB is not a market. All day yesterday I'm hearing about SMB. That's our market. Great SMB market in India. SMB is not a market. Global 1000 is not a market. Global 500, Fortune 500 is not a market. That old way of segmenting markets no longer works. Am I rattling, or is that somebody else? Because every time I show up to a company, I say, well, who's your target? Oh, everybody wants our product, right? There's two answers. Everybody should have this product. Or the other answer is, again, we focus on SMB. Or we focus on the Fortune 100. You know what? 99% of the Fortune 500 will never buy your product because you're too small. And the other 1% won't buy it because they don't buy new technology. So there's really only one that would probably buy it. So that won't work. And same thing with SMB. It's too broad of a designation. It doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm working with Citrix right now. Citrix Online. Do you know GoToMeeting? Are you familiar with GoToMeeting, GoToMyPC? They're one of our clients. And again, very successful. They took GoToMeeting and really overtook WebEx. Wildly successful, focusing on SMB. We're a great solution for SMB. The general manager calls me up and says, I got a big problem. I'm a $300 million division right now. I want to be $5 billion division. I can't be that focusing on SMB. I got sales reps that are calling on enterprises right now, and these are big deals they can close for me. But when they go to my website, it says SMB. What do I do? And they've been wrestling with this problem for a year. And I came in and we took a look at the situation. I said, well, forget the SMB, enterprise, SME. Why don't you focus on people and buyers that work a certain way? They're virtualized, they're working away from home and work, right? Are always on. Whether you're a one-person consultant, whether you're a small business, whether I'm a department of a large enterprise, or I'm a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. It doesn't matter how big the company is. It matters the problem they have is the way they work is too difficult. So my recommendation on this is, rather than segmenting in the old way by company size, segment by problem. If you have this problem, whether you're a big company, small company, whatever, you need me. Rule 1. Rule 2. Yes, you may have it. Yes.
This is for the positioning of the product in the marketplace. But internally, are we going to say that the segment, I mean, how do we engage the salespeople into going after the right?
So the question is this, you know, how do you tell the salespeople to go? That's what Citrix is selling. Citrix now is saying, I don't care if it's a big company, small company, it doesn't matter. What matters is how they work. And if they're, you know, they've got a whole qualification criteria checklist now, but it's not about company size, it's about how they work. You know, and the problems of staying connected, the problems that it's difficult to work together when everybody's all over the place, the difficulty of sharing information and data. And so they're given the same direction. That's what great positioning does, is it focuses your sales efforts, it focuses your product efforts too. Because if I'm going to focus on this market and these way of working, these 6 features don't have anything to do with that, I'm not going to do those. So, yes.
It's more like you are basically targeting more like personas.
Yeah, you got it. Ooh, good. I'm getting that right now. Yes, you'll see. Hold that thought. The question is, are you targeting more personas? And the question is, yes. So the question is, who's your Mary? Rule number 2. And I was going to use an Indian name here, but it didn't work. So let me tell you the story. So a number of years ago, there was a Wall Street Journal article about this retail clothing company in the middle of the United States. And at that time, all the other retail clothing companies were really having a hard time, but this one was growing. So the reporter went up there and asked, you know, why are you doing so well? Why are all your competitors having a really hard time, but you're driving revenue growth? And the CEO looked at him and said, well, that's because we sell to Mary. And Mary's a 43-year-old homemaker, and they just knew every single thing about Mary. So every single decision that company made, they asked the question, well, what would Mary think? And I think we as technology companies do a really poor job of knowing who our Mary is. And your Mary is your target buyer. Who is most likely going to buy this product? And that brings up personas. Let me say, let's take a typical CIO, right? I'm going to go after the CIO. This is a project we did for our client. This is just abbreviated personas. Personas are descriptions of target buyers. This is a perfect example. So first off, I have a CIO. The way we did it was actually segmented and said, well, there's not just a CIO. There's actually 3 different kinds of CIOs. One category of CIO is what we call Avanish, using the Indian names here. But it's a change agent. I changed the names, obviously, but it's change agent. It's a CIO that's working for a complex organization, a lot of change, disruptive company, or the industry is being disrupted. That this CIO is really focused on revenue growth, not cutting costs. He reports directly to the CEO. He's all about results-based IT, so he didn't care about technology, just what kind of results can I get. And what they value is IT agility, and they value, is my vendor willing to share risk with me because I'm going to do some big change here. That's very different from this second type of CIO, which is Audi. Audi is what we called an early adopter. This type of CIO typically works in a regionalized IT operation, has a heritage of experimentation, in other words, of always bringing in new technology generally. It's always looking for a game changer, but reports to a line of business, not to a CIO. And it's really how do I optimize my current IT investments, and I really value technical performance. And then there's a third one we call Kenneth. Kenneth is a maintainer. Kenneth works for a company that the business doesn't really rely upon IT for a change. They're just a steady state, kind of legacy shop. It's really the focus is on budget costs, and they report to the CFO. And the value really is, how do I cut costs and IT operational excellence? So you can see, by getting really clear about who your Mary is, you would have a different conversation with each one of these three. So my target market might be the old way, here it is. SMB CIO, if there is such a thing, right? No. The new way is, I'm going to go after a change agent. And specifically, I'm going to have a conversation about agility, changing the game, fast-paced organization. I can share the risk with you. Much more narrowly defined. So again, I think the better off you do as far as focusing and finding out who your Mary is, the better your positioning will resonate, and the more powerful your positioning strategy will be. Now, there's one thing about Mary. Mary changes. Mary changes. So your first 10 customers might be Mary, but then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I got a Nifrit buyer. VJ shows up, and that might be my next 50 customers, and then finally the next 100 might be Amon. This is really important because the technology companies that manage these changes do a better job of positioning. I'll give you a great example. Have you heard of Taleo? You may have heard Taleo because you're in the HR. Have you heard of Taleo? They're one of the big SaaS players, early SaaS players. They created the talent management market. I was brought in right before they went IPO. And they had a positioning problem. The problem was this. They had sold big companies, and they were calling them elephants. And I asked, well, who do you sell to? Oh, we sell to elephants. Big companies, multinational organizations, hundreds of thousands and thousands of employees. And what happened was their small competitor came out of nowhere and was just beating them everywhere. And they're like, what is going on here? So again, went out and did some analysis, came back, and I gave a presentation in front of the board. And I said, here's your problem. Your problem is elephants are extinct. There's a new animal in the jungle, and it's a cheetah. And you're still talking to elephants, and the cheetahs are running around and buying. And your competitor knows how to talk to cheetahs, and you don't. You're talking to elephants, and you're trying to talk elephant language to a cheetah, and they don't get you. So you're losing deals because your Mary has changed, right? So as soon as they shifted the conversation to talk to cheetahs, again, they took off again. Their win-loss ratio got back to where it should be, and they actually ended up buying that competitor at some point. So again, it's really important that not only know who your buyer is, but understand that they will change. So we've got SMB is not a market. Who is your Mary? The third one is, which I've already alluded to, is own a problem for your Mary. Really critical. The technology companies that are most successful, and again, if you leave with one thing, that's it. What is the business problem you solve? It's the same thing with Shy. Shy, what business problem do you solve? Oh, yeah, I solved the problem for Bond. They can't get the stuff to happen. Oh, geez, that's a big, hairy problem. But if you can articulate the problem that you solve, that's the winning, and be known for that. Be known for that. I had a client of mine who was selling, they had a decisioning engine selling to retailers, retail executives. It was a CRM decisioning system, and they were like, CRM decisioning, it's really great. And specs action, like, geez, nobody cares, right? Then we looked at all their customers, and you know what they were doing? These retail executives were having a problem with what they call customer lifetime value. You get a retail gets a customer, and they want to keep them for a long time, right? Well, the problem is the lifetime value is going like this because of brand hopping and all this. So we created this great conversation about your number one problem is today, customer lifetime value. And if you don't get this handled, you're going to lose your job. And they became known, this company became known as the provocative, informed source of information about customer lifetime value. They did white papers on it, speaking on it, and of course they had a great solution to solve it. But again, they got known as not the decisioning company, but the customer life cycle management, or the customer life cycle company. And that's a much better position to have. So again, let's look, Shy, again, these are examples. When I showed up, they were a hyper-relational technology company. Then they became an application integration company. Cordiant, again, the decisioning predictive CRM, or do you want to be a customer lifetime value company, right? Or another company, this is SAS, the big analytics firm, right? We did a project for them, and they were competing against IBM, getting their, IBM has control over everything. And they were selling a campaign management software. I said, no. What we're really selling to the CMO is we're going to help the CMO drive incremental revenue for the company. So they became the Find More Revenue company, right? Again, shifting from conversation from technology to actually business. But it's not enough to just own a problem. You have to be connected to a funded initiative. There has to be a budget for that problem. The problem you'll run into is maybe it's a big, hairy problem, but if there's no budget tied to it, then you got to go steal budget from somewhere, and that's a bad place to be. Long sales cycles, horrible place to be. I had a client that was in the supplier enablement business, right? Basically enable suppliers, and they were talking to these supplier enablement guys deep in the bowels of IT. Guys had no budget. They're trying to sell them this stuff. Solved a big problem for them. But these buyers had no budget. So they had long sales cycle trying to crawl their way up. So I said, let's have a strategic conversation with a chief procurement officer. And the conversation was about procure to pay. Can we streamline that procure to pay, i.e. get your cash in a lot faster, right? Streamline that whole process. And that was it was called touchless, I think it was called touchless procure to pay. And that was the big thing. We're the solution for that. And as soon as they hopped up the conversation like that, magically all of a sudden they were getting into the chief procurement officer appointments with that particular buyer where they never could get it, hello, I'm from this company, supplier enablement. Oh yeah, I got to talk to my supplier enablement. Hi, I'm this company. I want to talk to you about touchless procure to pay. Oh God, come in tomorrow. That's my big hairy problem. So again, own a problem, but make sure that it is connected to a budget and a funded initiative. Rule number 4, have a point of view. The most powerful technology companies today, the market leaders, all have a viewpoint. All have a viewpoint. I did some work for Convergys, again, call center outsourcing. 2 problems they're having. Retailers aren't selling a lot, so there's a lot less call center volume. And they got a whole bunch of competitors that are just undercutting them in price. What are we going to do? The conversation in the market right now was price, 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 price. Give me the cheapest price, cheapest price, cheapest price. There was no way Convergys could be the low-cost price performer. They couldn't do it. And they're having a hard time articulating their premium price. So we took a look at their customers. And these guys listen to 6 billion customer interactions every single year. And we did some analysis and we'll say, well, you know what your big customer problems are right now. It's just too damn hard to work with a company. They want it easy. Just make it easy. So we had a conversation that said, you, as a call center executive, not only do you have to cut costs, maybe turn your call center into revenue, but you know what you really have to do? You got to make it easy for your buyers. Just make it easy is the new mantra. And whoever can balance those 3, just make it easy, cut costs, and revenue, are the ones that are going to work. And we're the ones we can come in and tell you what's the right balance for your company. Great conversation. We created this story. And we went out to review the story. And the GM walks in and she said, she's Southern. She goes, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a customer of mine. And he said, well, I just was out at a And I tried this story, and I'm going, oh, geez, I hope it worked, you know. I just tried the story, and I got to tell you, we spent 2 hours on this first slide here, and it was all about balancing those three things. It was the best sales calls I ever had because I wasn't selling. I was giving them information they never had. I had a viewpoint about this industry. So we were having a business conversation, and I actually actually left them with something they never thought of before. So again, if you can shift from a selling mode to more of, what's my contribution to this buyer? Can I leave them with some information or a way of looking at the problem they've never seen before? And can I be the evangelist for that viewpoint? That's what's creating powerful differentiated strategies in the market. Rule number 5. Take a corner of the room. Or Oracle. Or maybe IBM. Yeah, exactly. So what happened? What's the problem is, if you're all bunched in the middle, you all look the same. So if you all look the same, what are they going to do? Mary's either not going to make a decision because she can't figure out the difference between you all, or she's just saying, forget it. I'm just going to go with the big guys, the brand name companies, because everybody looks the same. So if you're a big company, it's a great positioning strategy to say, you see this all the time. One of your competitors comes out with a feature. Oh, we got Oracle. I'm going to have that feature next year. You know, sales for sure. We're going to have that 18 months from now. Because they're trying to commoditize the marketplace because they're the brand name gorilla. But for everybody else, it's a bad place to be. So what you really want to do is when your Mary walks into the room, you want to carve out a corner of the room and likewise box your competition into other corners of the room so there's very clear contrast between you and your competition. So let me tell you what that would look like. Mary walks in the room. And you say, oh, Mary, hi, Mary, how are you? I tell you what, your big, hairy problem right now, that's us over here. You got to talk to us because we solve your big, hairy problem. Those guys yesterday, great company, fabulous company, my competitor, but they solved yesterday's problem. And, oh, the other competitor, yeah, they're over in that corner of the room. They solve a real tactical problem. But, Mary, your big, hairy problem is over here, and you got to talk to me. So I think in positioning, if you can take a corner of the room and create clear contrast from your competition, the better off you are. One of our clients was Symantec, big company, right? Antivirus, anti-spam product, SMS, 8300 or something. They own that market. All of a sudden, woke up 5 years later, holy crap, our market share is going like this, what's going on? Big competitor. I think it was Ironport, got bought by Cisco. High performance, boom. So they owned the corner of the room, big, heavy performance, a lot of features, blah, blah, blah. Another competitor came into the room and said, I'm Barracuda. I'm real easy to use, I'm cheap, I'm going to own the easy to use and cheap corner. So you got one competitor over here, big, high performance, heavyweight. Another one, cheap, easy to use. And then Symantec, what do they stand for? Nothing. They're in the middle. So we had to create, they couldn't own this corner anymore, performance. They couldn't own the cheap, easy to use performance. So what did we do? You had to have a different conversation. And we said, you, Mary, you know what your problem is right now today? You spend too much admin time on security. What we're all about is near zero admin. And we'll completely reduce your admin costs for security because you don't want your IT people spent on security. That's a waste of time. It adds no value to the company. So we're going to own the corner of the room over here called admin security problem. And if you just got a lot of your IT bucks spent on security admin, then you want to go over here. And then again, they took off again. So again, clear distinctions, changing the conversation, own a corner of the room. And again, solving a problem for their Mary. Yes, sir.
This kind of repositioning, does it cannibalize the existing business?
Does the positioning cannibalize their existing business? Repositioning of Symantec didn't cannibalize their business because they could say we had all the big features, we were, you know. But see, what they tried to do is change the conversation. The buying criteria was either on big performance or price, right? And so we're not going to talk about those conversations. We think there's a bigger problem, and that's the one over here. So it actually supported their existing position was, frankly, nothing. We're in the middle, you know. So, yes, sir. Yes.
But still they had something that each of these guys had.
That's correct.
Right? So it's not as if they are just going to charge or expect payment for that, just part of the story. They are expecting a full part.
That's correct. So I think the question was, or the comment was, well, yeah, they can do performance, and they can, they're easy to use, right? And they're not giving those up. But the problem, you want to, okay, let's have a pissing contest about, you got bigger performance than I do, right? Feature war, it's a bad place to be. So the conversation is, yeah, we do the big performance, we're easy to use, but I tell you, the big issue is, and what we do really, really well, is we solve your IT security admin problem because we have these 3 features or capabilities that nobody else does. Or actually, they actually had some services they added to it to make that point. Yes, sir.
So this is more from the perspectives of web startups. Probably
There you
it
go.
applies both to B2C and B2B. The barrier to entry is generally low, especially if you're it's a new found domain. Let's take e-commerce, for example, in India today. So the problem is you come up with a differentiator, but it's very easy to ape it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So how do you kind of create differentiators in such a place?
Yeah, so the problem is if you do a really good job of positioning, your competitors are going to copy you. I just assume, I'm going to do, with my clients, I just assume we're going to do a great job and they're going to copy us. That's why you have to make sure that your differentiator is really unique. And I always ask, what's your secret sauce, right? What's the unique IP here that if you had a bake-off, in other words, head-to-head feature war, that you would win 9 times out of 10? Then that's your differentiator. So what happens is, inevitably, you do a great job of positioning. We're going to own this problem over here, the IT admin problem. All of a sudden, they wake up and go, geez, we do that too. Okay, great. We got these 3 features that uniquely enable us to do that. Well, we kind of have one of those. Or, yeah, we have those 3, but they don't do them as well as you do. Then they're playing on your buying criteria, and you're not playing on their buying criteria, which is where Symantec was. They were playing on the buying criteria of their competitors. They weren't owning the buying criteria. So then you're in a great position because you own the buying criteria, but it's got to be grounded in your unique differentiators and what you do better than anybody else. So again, it can't be in the absence, positioning can't be done in the absence of product. And you have to have a really good product, and you actually should have something really unique and different or better than your competition. I'll take one more question, and I'll get to the rest of them. Hold on. Let me take this gentleman back here. We haven't heard from him yet.
What happens if the problem that you're solving is not actually their biggest problem?
Oh, what happens if the problem you're solving is not that big of a problem? That's a problem. You got to make it a problem. You got to make it the big problem. And that's the I had a client, if I can remember. Here's what I've done before in the past. You want to make the tiny problem the big problem. So the way I have a conversation is because the question is, why you now? Well, we solved this tiny problem. Well, you got to make this problem big. So for your Mary, the convergence of all these market dynamics, economic uncertainty, regulate, whatever those are, has made this seemingly little problem the big problem right now. And then what I do is I get my customers that I've sold this to also say, they're Marys, right? Yeah, this is today's big problem. This is a big, hairy problem, right? And use your customers to voice, because vendors only have so much credibility, frankly, right? About this much. Right? So I always let my clients and customers speak for me. And it's the same thing with Symantec. Rather than Symantec saying, it's like they get the CISO standing up and saying, yeah, IT admin is the worst. That was never a problem before, right? Or it was a small one. Now they get all these CSOs stand up and say, yeah, you're right. This is a big, big, hairy problem. And if you don't solve it, it's going to bite you, and build the argument that way. Yes, sir.
So the differentiator is nothing but a big bubble. Before your competitors, they split it. Become a standard features. How to sustain your differentiator?
I'm sorry, how do you sustain a differentiator?
Correct.
Well,
what is the differentiator now is going to next 3 months go to standard features by your competitors. How to sustain that?
It could be. That's why the companies that have the strongest barriers, if you will, always have a unique IP or secret sauce, right? There's always something they do uniquely. And sometimes you don't have that, so maybe you have to surround it in services, and maybe that's what makes it unique. But a lot, that's when I do these workshops, we have a whole conversation about what's your differentiator. And I walk through, you know how you find out your Mary is, if you don't do a lot of market research? Give me your last 10 customers that you've sold this year, and let's look for patterns. Give me the 4 or 5 that if you could sell 100 more of those, you'd be wildly successful. And I ask, who bought? How did you enter the account? What was the big problem you solved? Who was your competition? Why did they buy it? And those patterns emerge. But I think you're better off if you got some unique IP that you can stand on that can't be copied, like Citrix, for example. Online means commodity market, right? But what they do have that nobody else has is this network. I asked them, why is Skype talking to you guys? Well, because they could never build the network we've got. We got this real-time HD network, and it's taken billions of dollars to build this thing. Oh, well, great. Let's make that a differentiator then. What problem does it solve? Great experiences. Okay, we're going to have a conversation about great experiences. And how do you interact and have, virtually in HD, like experience, like you're next to each other. And to have that, you got to have a real-time network. So it is the fundamental question, though, in positioning is what can you compete on and what is your unique differentiator? Yeah. Let me continue with the rules. Oh, hold on. Let me continue with the rules, and then I'll let you speak, okay? See, there's only 5 rules. See, it wants your question. Why don't you go ahead and say what your question is, and then...
Now, in all these conversations, you're talking about the very changing and you get into you were asked for the consultation only when the Mary's changed.
Yes.
And how do you predict that the Mary is going to change? Because you are always into that particular positioning, and then you really have to see it differently.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you know the gazelles show up in the forest, or how do you know, Mary is now, VJ, right? I'll tell you how you know is your sales stop. So but seriously, I had a client, a good friend of mine. She was a tax accountant. Have you ever met tax accountants before? Probably not. But she was a tax accountant, very good. She created a software company because being a tax accountant, there was all this. It's probably the last bastion in an enterprise that's never been automated, right? And so she created this really fabulous software for automating all these functions in tax accounting, so they could. And she had a great ROI because you could get rid of all these, high-priced, consultants that would come in, tax consultants. And she was wildly successful. She created a conversation about you as a tax consultant. You get no respect, right? You get no respect. What happens at the executive table when they have a tax question? Do they call you? Nah. They call that audit partner to come in and sit there. Don't you want a seat at the table? Well, with my software, I can give you a seat at the table because I can give you all those answers. I can automate all this process. Great conversation. Whoosh, took off. Got her first 6 clients like that. Great. Then all of a sudden, boom, nothing. Sales cycle's long. Nobody wants to talk. They aren't closing deals. What's going on? Well, their Mary changed. There's a whole bunch of tax accountants that, frankly, don't want a seat at the table. Actually, they don't even want anybody to know they even exist, right? So that was a whole group of them that was the wrong message. So they switched their message to more of an ROI. You'll save money, no risk. Nobody will know you're here. Everything's steady state. And again, it took off again. So the way I always know it is if sales start to stall, or you got a competitor coming in that's taking away a bunch of market share, why are they doing really well? Like in Taleo's case, that's how you know it. So rule number 6. Communicate with stories. And again, this is what we've been talking about. How do you create a powerful story? I think, how do you make your products come alive through a story? How do you capture the imagination of the market? I always ask a company, what is your contribution to this industry? What a great question. What's your contribution to this industry? I ask India, what's your contribution? As Indian technologists, what's your contribution to the technology industry? That's a great question. That's a big question. Big question. What is your contribution to the world? And the same thing, I think what stories are all about. They engage customers. I use, for example, I don't know about it here in India, but in the States, All the technology companies have a mission statement. Do they have that here? A mission statement. You know, there are posters on the wall. I think there's only two mission statements. They just go around to all the companies because they're all the same, right? Right? Well, why don't you create a founder story? I'm always curious about why they started this company. Oh, geez, I was a tax accountant, and every day I had to go in and face these. It was horrible. So I said, forget it. There's a better way I'm going to create. That's a much more engaging story than a mission statement. Why don't you create a founder story? Why did you find that? Why did you come up with this great idea? People would rather listen to that than your hyper-relational technology, blah, blah, blah. Right? I was just like you, Mary. I had a job just like you. I found a better way. That's why I started this company. Communicate with stories, with metaphors. And I'll show you how to create a good story. There's a process or methodology of doing that. But the better you talk about the stories, in stories, the more powerful your position is going to be.
Bob, we have some questions from Twitter as well. So should we take them now?
Yes, we can, absolutely, because this isn't working. So.
Okay, so the first question is the top 3 things a startup should do to focus for effective positioning when they have budget constraints.
Say that once again. When they
top 3 things a startup should do for effective positioning with budget constraints.
Well, I don't think it costs any budget unless you want to hire me to come up with a position. You got to have a positioning story. I mean, because you're going to waste all your marketing budget and money. That's why a lot of people, you see it all the time, go out and hire a PR agency, right? Build all this collateral, all these marketing campaigns, and get nowhere because they don't have a good story. The fundamental foundation to all marketing is you got to have a story. Don't spend a dime until you have a good story. And how do you know you have a good story? Go out and talk to customers. Does this story make sense? You're my Mary. I think I got something interesting. Is this interesting to you? Not really. Well, go back. It's not a good story. Get out of your office, get away from your product, and go talk to your customers and prospects and ask them, is this a good story? What do you think? Or I go to customer, why did you buy from me? They probably didn't buy from you because of the 100 features you developed. They probably bought 1 or 2 things or you made them a hero in their company for some reason. So that's my advice, is don't spend any money until you got a good story because you're going to waste all your money.
Great.
You want to?
Okay.
One more?
One more. How does the content strategy help with positioning, if at all?
How does the content strategy help with positioning? Well, if you're referring to content strategy as in my content assets, my marketing assets, is that?
This is presumably a device vendor? The white papers and other marketing materials.
Oh, this is the foundation for it all. I'll get to that in a second. I got a slide. Actually, I have a slide on that. So let me talk about stories. To create a story answers 3 questions. A good story has to say, why you now? A good story answers the question, why you now? Why not your technology 3 years ago? Why not 5 years ago? Why now? And the reason is because there's a new problem, right? Or an old problem that's gotten worse. Why you now? The second question that stories need to answer is not only why you now, but how are you different? How are you different? And then the third thing is, which most stories miss, is how are you going to make my life fundamentally different 6 months from now? I'm a Mary. How are you going to make my life different? How's my life going to be different? Show me where show me the nirvana 6 months from now. And I have some examples of stories, and I'll show you those as well. But that's really, really simple. It's those 3 questions. Oh, there's another rule. No geek speak. So here's what I'm talking about here. This is an actual press release from HP. Vertica announced version 5.0, analytics platform, flexibility, real-time performance, analytic workloads, analyzes data on a massive scale, improve flexibility, extensibility, and performance. Right? We're going to ban these words. I'm on a mission. in the technology industry to ban these words. Please, no more flexible. Your product is not comprehensive. It's not easy to use. It's not collaborative. It doesn't have massive scale. And please, it's not agile. It doesn't, those words are so overused, they don't mean anything. You can put a couple others up there. Extensible, right? Scalable. You know, and I tell you what's interesting right now, cloud. CIOs don't want to hear about cloud anymore. Notice VMware switched their conversation to IT as a service. CIOs don't want to hear about it anymore. Blah, 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 right? Tell me what problem I solve. And oh, by the way, you do it cloud. That's great, right? But we're going to ban these 5 words. Could you come up here and help me with my, because I don't have to hop up here. Wouldn't you mind? Thanks, because maybe does that work now? Just go, and I'll just tell you. So this is this is another way to say it. This is an example of, I think, it's a more powerful positioning message. It's plain spoken messages in your buyer's words. It's Power Advocate, which is the name of this company, is an energy intelligent company that helps you restructure costs and steer company performance. We give you in-depth understanding of this energy supply chain market. It's for pace-setting executives that want an order of magnitude improvement in their company performance. So you can chart future growth, you know, the probability of cost changes, understand the impact of your cost structure. This is business language. This isn't techie language, and that's what they want to hear. Even CIOs, if you're telling them, don't talk about technology, because they're going to send you a technologist. Business, plain spoken words. Again, no flexibles, no comprehensives, no agiles. Why don't we go to the next slide? So how do you put all this stuff? We've got this model. We have these rules. How do you put all this into action? So let's talk a little bit about that. First off, we'll go to the next slide. Hit it, click, one more, and one more. So I think this was the question about the content strategy over here. So here's what I always build. When I do positioning, my deliverables are twofold. Number one, it's a PowerPoint presentation. It's a story. It's an external-facing story for the market, for customers, corporate pitch, sales. Then I also build an internal document for the marketing organization, and this is called a message guide. And this has things like your single message, short message, long message, all in Word format, problem solved, differentiators, and this is given to all the marketing department to update the collateral, the website, run campaigns, give to the PR agency or agencies, so everybody's echoing the same messages. So who's going to write my white paper? Here, take this and read this. This is what I'm trying to communicate. Right? PR agency, write your press releases off of this. But the basis of it is I always start with the story first, and then we write the messages after that. And then, as you can see, you can use it for campaigns, et cetera. It's campaigns, product marketing, internal rallying cry, buyer conference. So it's the foundation of all marketing communication, really. Why don't we go to the next slide? So let's talk about how to tell a powerful story. And first, I'll show you how not to tell one. Why don't we go with this slide? So here's a typical tech story. This actually is pretty much, while I was here in India, somebody shot me off a presentation. You know, take a look at this. Can you help me? And this is pretty much slide number 1. Introducing our great product for cloud mobile world. Slide number 2. Here's our great platform. Slide number 3. Here's our great monitoring feature. Slide 4. Here's our great analytics feature. Slide 5. Here's some stats to back up why we're so great. Slide 6. How our cool product works. And slide 7. Here's a bunch of screenshots that are really cool. Slide 8. Here's our logo splash slide. Everybody's got one of those, right? Our customers. Slide 9. Here's our great executives. And then slide 10. You'd be crazy not to buy our cool product. Now, that's the typical technology presentation, and it's absolutely the wrong way to build a powerful positioning strategy and drive any kind of revenue growth. Now, let me show you in my model how a positioning story would be, you know, by slide by slide. Why don't we go to the next one? And again, this one's answering why your company now. I'm a Mary. Why your company now? First slide is, here's a bunch of Marys just like you, and here's big results. So I lead with customer examples. The first slide is, here's Marys like you. What do they all have in common? They got big results, and they bought me. Second slide is, here's why your world has changed. Here's some recent market dynamics. Your world has changed. Third slide. As a result, here's your big hairy problem. Yesterday this problem wasn't that big. Now it's a big problem. And slide 4, you may lose your job. So the problem's getting worse if you don't do something about it. Slide 5. Traditional approaches no longer work. That stuff was built for another era, built for a different problem, right? Doesn't work anymore. It's not as wrong. Again, don't make people wrong for the investment they made. You made this investment in this old ERP system because at that time your business looked like this and it was absolutely the appropriate system. Your business is completely different now. Your problems are completely different. Why would you try to solve today's problem with yesterday's technology? That's what you're trying to create the conversation. Next slide is, what do you got to do to fix the problem? This is setting up the buying criteria in your favor. Notice I haven't even talked about your company yet, right? I'm just talking about the problem in your world, and you, Mary. Then, slide 7. Finally, the answer is our company, slide 8. Here's 3 to 4 reasons why customers choose us, our differentiators. Slide 9. Here's your big mess. We just cleaned it all up. In other words, how's your life going to look fundamentally different with our solution? And then slide 10, here's a call to action. Let us come in and see if we can help you. 10 slides. Very, very different conversation than the typical tech story. Why don't we go to the next? So I'll show you how to do pillars, and then I'll actually bring up some sample stories, and we can show those. So the question is, how do I package up my differentiators? How do I package up my differentiators in this story? And I find a model that works really well is what I call positioning pillars, 3 to 4 positioning pillars. So let's talk about that, how you do that. So a positioning pillar would be a headline. Here's my secret sauce and a benefit statement. Headline, secret sauce, benefit statement. Secret sauce is your differentiator. So let me show you what those look like. First example I'm going to use. Next slide, please. So remember that big data company I talked about? Well, this is what this is what they said. This was their differentiators, and in their slide deck. And they said, well, why do companies choose this? Customers choose this company. Oh, we got a flexible data model. We got massive scalability. We got, modern indexing and dedupe. Okay, great. Now I'll show you what the positioning pillars look like now. Go to the next slide. Here we say forward-thinking IT execs choose this solution because we make it easy to run your operations on big data. Number 2, we give you first-to-information advantage. Number 3, we continually make your information more valuable. And number 4, we are mission-critical ready. Notice these are all value-based headlines. Now, these values are enabled by the features. So if we go to the next slide, underneath each of these pillars, go ahead and, make it easy to run your operations on big data. Why? Because I got some unique differentiators where I can unify, I can accept the data as is, I can index every detail. Next pillar. First information advantage. And we enable that because we have iterative queries and you don't need ETL, right? Next one is make your information more available because we got some unique capabilities that doesn't take, queries enrich the data, it's easy to expand. And then mission critical ready, we got Google-like scalability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you see, I put the features as a support for the value conversation and the headlines. Here's another one, ArcSight. Has anybody heard of ArcSight? Security company, hot security company, just got bought by HP. Again, the same thing. Rather than monitor, correlate, consolidate, we said, well, why customers choose ArcSight? Because we keep tabs. We allow them to sift through the noise, and we can see everything. Let's use another example. This is a smart energy company. Why companies choose Echelon? Because we help companies make smart, fast, local decisions, share data across the energy network, go one step further, and bulletproof reliability. Notice these are